Hello friends and welcome to today's video. Today I have a time lapse of a mixed media piece for you. In this one I'll be using watercolors and then colored pencils to add some details and final touches. So I decided to do a watercolor mixed media piece today, mainly because it's been a while since I last worked with watercolors on my channel, and because watercolors, they are my first love in the world of art, and I have been neglecting them a bit, I think, lately. And I wanted to get back to watercolors, but also add some interest with adding also the colored pencils. So I have all the supplies listed in the description if you are interested and if you want to check which colors I use in my colored pencils, for example. But the basics is that I'm using here my Rembrandt watercolor palette, and I am using also Fabriano's hot pressed watercolor paper, which I think is a really good, I'd say, affordable, not overly expensive, but really good quality watercolor paper option. And I don't often work with hot pressed watercolor paper. I prefer cold pressed or even rough. But whenever I'm using also some colored pencils, I really enjoy how well they glide and how well they actually work here with the hot pressed watercolor paper. So I started with a very loose sketch and kind of rough sketch with a light blue colored pencil, which is what I love to sketch with whenever I am using watercolors. And then I added first layer wet on wet. So I added loads of water on the paper, and then I added quite a lot of watercolor as well. So there was lots of pigment, and whenever you're using wet on wet, then it's important to keep in mind that the colors fade quite a bit once the paper and color dries. So I let the paper dry completely before starting to add second layer, and the second layer is also worked on watercolors, but what I do here is that the paper is actually dry, so I use wet on dry method, and that way I can get a bit more precise, or a lot more precise end result. This is often what I like to do whenever I'm working with watercolors. I love to start with, especially with watercolor landscapes, I love to start with wet on wet layer and then start adding details kind of on a dry paper with the second layer and third and fourth and however many layers I'll then be adding. As you can see, I am mixing the colors quite a lot for this piece, and I'm actually using only a handful of different colors. So my main colors is, I think, Payne's Gray Bluish. That is actually an addition from Schmincke, an addition that I added to this palette because I can't have a landscape palette without Payne's Gray. And I especially liked that bluish Payne's Gray from Schmincke, so that's the one I'm using a lot here. Then I'm using this kind of darker brown. I'm not exactly sure anymore which brown it is, but it's one of darker, cold, cool brown. And I'm adding quite a lot of that. And also yellow ochre, which is another staple in my landscapes. I have also ultramarine, which I am mixing a lot together with this darker purple color. Then I have this very bright green that I mix together with Payne's Gray to get this kind of more muted green. But basically I'm using, I would say, only a handful of colors here. So I'll have recommendations in the description below if you want to know and if you're interested. As said, unfortunately I don't have the exact numbers for these colors that I have here in this palette, but you can pretty much go with kind of similar colors and get the end result anyway if you want to follow along. As you know by now, I absolutely love to mix colors, and I think that's the key also for these kinds of landscapes. Very often these landscape palettes actually have really good mixing colors. This small palette was originally Rembrandt's landscape palette, and I did a couple of alterations there, for example adding that Payne's Gray, and I think I also added a more kind of bright pink and took away, I think, another orange or something like that, because I'm not a huge, I don't use orange that much, and whenever I do, then I mix it. And that was the kind of starting point. And these kinds of landscape palettes, they are often put together so that you can color mix quite a lot. And as said, pretty often you have to color mix because nature is not just bright pink or bright red or blue or yellow. And especially where I live in the winter and autumn and springtime, and even during summer, it's actually very rare to find those super bright colors. It's much more this kind of muted and very neutral colors that we can see around. So that's why color mixing is a key once again, and knowing your palettes. And that's also why I enjoy more and more using a limited watercolor palette. I have my large watercolor palette next to me. I'm looking at it and thinking that there is way too many colors. I actually these days prefer these more limited palettes because I think it's just, it makes you know your colors so well and you get to know the different color mixes. And I'm someone who loves to mix colors. I know that you could have wonderful convenience colors in your palette and you could have hundreds of different colors, but for me that's not the thing. Actually, I enjoy limited palettes. So that being said, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this and also encourage you that if you do not have one of those amazing palettes with like hundreds of different colors, you will be totally fine. Just get to know your colors, get to know the different color mixes that you enjoy using most and that fit to the nature that is around you, and that way you can go really, really far. I think my dream would be to create curated limited palettes for each season. That's something I've been thinking of doing here on my channel during the year to come, that I would share with you what kind of limited watercolor palettes I would put together. As you know, I have shared my favorite Nia colors for different seasons, and I'm also always curating a kind of selection of Inktense pencils for each season, so maybe that's something I could do also with watercolors. So let me know if that's something you are interested in, and I would add that to my list of upcoming videos. Once the first layers are dry and once I've added all the watercolor I want to add, then I'll start working with colored pencils. And with this piece I really wanted to actually do a lot of colored pencil work here. So I'm not just adding a few details and few shadows, but I am actually adding quite a lot of color pencil, and you can see that process happening next. And why I wanted to do this is that I really enjoy working with colored pencils, and even though, you know, I love watercolor pieces, I love watercolor paintings a lot, but sometimes it's nice to have a change. So that's what's happening here. I have here a selection of different colored pencils. As said, I will have the exact colors and brands listed in the description if you are interested. But basically what I have here are my favorite brands to use. So I have here Caran d'Ache Luminance, I have also one, I think one at least, Caran d'Ache Pablo, and I think Bubbles and Luminance, they go really well together. I have also here Faber-Castell Polychromos, which is my, I would say, second favorite at least, or one of the top two card pencils. I absolutely love to work with the Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. And then I have here also Derwent drawing pencils. And this video is not sponsored by any of the brands mentioned here. These are just my favorite art supplies that I enjoy using. So that's why they are included in this video as well. But as said, I have the exact colors and brands and everything listed in the description, so you can check it out there. The reason I like to work with very different colored pencils and why I'm not just using one brand is that they, first of all, they have these lines especially have very different kind of color range. And for me, it's all about the color, of course, the right color. And I have my absolute favorites in each of the brands and each of their colored pencil lines. And that is why I like to mix and match. Also, they have very different tips and very kind of different feeling to them. Derwent drawing pencils, of course, really soft, and they have very thick lead, and they are wonderful to work with on those more blurred details, for example. But then again, with Polychromos, I can get a super sharp point, and they are really hard pencil, and I think they are perfect for details. And I also love to layer them and mix them on paper. So, I mean, just as an example that I really enjoy mixing and matching and using different kinds of colored pencils together. That's just my style, but that's also why often on my channel you see me using a kind of a variety and mix of different colored pencils. Same goes with watercolor. I rarely have only one brand. Even in this Rembrandt palette, I have added one Schmincke watercolor because I don't know, I'm not so brand loyal, I would say. I have my favorite colors and I have my favorite consistencies and favorite feeling to different pencils and paints, and then I mix and match to have my perfect supplies. As you can also see during the process, this picture kind of changes a bit step by step. I start with one idea and I had a reference image that I used to kind of have the original idea and sketch what this could look like. But then as I go along and as I paint and draw, then I start to see things, and that often happens, especially when using wet on wet technique. I like to then use the organic shapes and whatever is appearing there in the paper and let that guide where I'm going. So that's what happening here as well. The original picture and the original thought that I had, they just don't last that long. That I have the inspiration and then I go very intuitively to just, create something. So that's my process today, and that's also why I don't want to maybe call this an official tutorial. This is more like a relaxing art session and hopefully also inspires you, but there is no real methodology here or step-by-step approach. It's much more just me enjoying art and creating what comes to my mind. As we are adding in the final details, I want to thank you with all my heart for watching this video, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please give it a like and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. I hope that you will enjoy your own art journey, and as said, I hope that this video inspires you to maybe take your watercolors and colored pencils out and create something that gives you maybe a kind of a joyous and happy art moment to your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Bye for now.